Hidden Gems, Episode 2, Auction Games, including a Forgotten Feld. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Cameron. Thanks for listening to our show.
That's right, Episode 2. The podcast continues.
Yes, sir.
I guess we can call it a series now.
I guess so.
So, we had some pretty cool stuff happen this week, I guess.
Yeah, it's been a pretty eventful week for the podcast, I would say.
Feels like we're getting things up and running a little bit more.
Yeah, slowly but surely.
What's the newest addition to our social media plan?
Yeah, so we've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes on the podcast. We've mentioned this before, but there's a lot that goes into getting a podcast off the ground and being successful. So we've been working on social media accounts, which admittedly I know very little to nothing about. So Talia has been giving me tutorials on how to set up social media accounts, how to set up Instagram, how to use Instagram. I've never used Instagram before, so she's taken me through like how to do video, how to add these animations. She's like, oh, if you push this little button, you can put this like little cartoon cat down here in the corner, and you can put music in the background. Yeah, exactly.
How did you do your makeup and stuff?
It's overwhelming. I mean, these guys joke about it a lot, and I'm sure that they'll joke more about it. But if you could see this room right now, these guys are like sitting in front of laptops, and I have a piece of paper for my notes. I've always been just like paper and pencil kind of guy, and the technology part has been challenging.
We're going to get you into the technological age sooner than later.
Reluctantly.
We have been joking about teaching Chris to code, but of any of us in this room that needs to learn to code, it's not you.
It's definitely not me. I mean, literally, before you guys got here, I was attempting to upload things on the Google Drive, and Jason was showing me the spreadsheet again, and he was teaching me how to sort things in an Excel file.
Hey, you know,
I'm not kidding.
I'm proud of you. You added some stuff to a Google Doc earlier today,
I did.
And it just warms my heart.
Yeah. It's challenging. Yeah, Jason was like, yeah, if you click on up here, you can sort things, and it's more organized. And I'm like, oh, okay.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Technology. I had no idea. So, yeah.
Chris is like, so how do I access this from my email?
Yeah, exactly.
So technology may not be your thing, but one thing that I will say you have picked up pretty well recently is drink making.
Yes.
So we actually have been treated to a pretty spectacular drink, I must say.
Yeah.
For this second episode. So tell us a little bit about what we have here.
Yeah, so we didn't get to talk about this too much in our episode 0, but we do have a lot of hobbies outside of board games, and all of us in this room enjoy drinks quite a bit. I know Cameron is quite a fan of beer, although he enjoys bourbon as well. I know Jason is a big bourbon guy, as am I, but I would say ever since the start of this year when COVID started, we've really gotten into mixing drinks a lot more, mixology, just because the ABC stores have been open. So it's one of the few things you can do during this time. So Talia and I have been mixing a lot of drinks. So she gave me the idea, and actually I got to give him credit too. Gerald Harvey, one of our friends, actually mentioned this to me, kind of pairing every episode with a cocktail. So for this week, we're talking about bidding and auction games. So I chose a drink called Stock Market Crash.
Nice.
This is a stiff drink, okay? Yeah. So the idea behind this drink is if you had like a really bad day on the stock market, like if your crypto like took a dive, this is the kind of drink you would want to drink. So it's got 3 different kinds of whiskey in it. It's got rum, Southern Comfort.
Wow.
A little splash of peach schnapps. It's pretty good, actually. I like it.
Interesting. I don't get any peach. It actually tastes kind of like it has Coca-Cola in it.
Oh, yeah. It does have Coke in it.
It's kind of chocolatey.
Okay.
It has Coke in it, for sure. But I went easy on the peach schnapps because Talia gives me a hard time because she thinks peach schnapps is tacky. So I try to like take it easy with the peach schnapps.
Is the concept of the drink like, I don't care what you put in that glass, it just needs to be alcohol? Because that's quite a handful of various.
I think so. Yeah.
Various liquors.
I think the intent is for the drink to be hard, and it is hard.
All right.
And,
well, it's really good.
Yeah, I enjoy it. So we'll have more coming in future episodes.
We'll have to post recipes.
Oh, for sure.
On the guild page.
I have already thought about that and definitely plan to, for sure.
So the theme of this week's episode is auctions, like you mentioned. So let's talk a little bit more about auctions in the context of board games.
Absolutely. So auctions, one of my favorite mechanisms. I think we all at this table enjoy auctions quite a bit. So it was one of the first thoughts I had for doing an episode. And auctions are just ripe material for board games because there are so many different kinds of auctions. Like literally, I've thought about this before. You could just look at the different kind of auctions that exist in the world and probably build board games around them. And I'm sure a lot of people do that because there are just so many different types. The three main types being your English auction, your most common auction people think about with the incrementally increasing bid when you're bidding for an item. Dutch auctions where you work backwards, where you set a high price and then the price drops, and then eventually somebody will pull the trigger on a price once they meet that price they're willing to pay, which I can't think of many games that use Dutch auction, but that would be a really
It'd be interesting,
cool way to do a board game.
There is a Knizia game out there that I came across that uses it.
Oh, really?
It's not popular, but it also uses a plastic timer device that has an alarm that goes off whenever.
that sounds
I've heard of
agonizing.
this game. Do you remember the name of that?
I don't. I'll have to find it.
Timers in games, like they get me. It's like I
Like an
came here
oven
to
timer.
relax and have fun, and like you're stressing me out with your little timer.
Right. Yeah. I've heard of this. I can't remember what it's called either, but you are ringing some bells for sure. So Dutch auction and then a blind bid where you kind of have like a closed fist bid and then everybody reveals and whoever has the high bid wins. So, but like
It's
I said,
kind of the worst in my opinion. Probably because like we were trying to buy a home right now, and that's basically
right.
in this market, like what buying a home is like.
Exactly. Blind bids typically give you the least amount of information, which they tend to be divisive because some people hate them because you feel like you just don't know where you are. But yeah, lots of different type of auctions. So having said that, just a little primer for auctions if you're not familiar with them or how they work. How do you guys feel about auction games in general?
I'm a big fan of auction games, personally. I think one style that you didn't mention that I think may be my favorite is the once around auction.
Yeah,
Basically,
the Medici auction.
Everyone gets a single bid, and so your turn order can really influence how you have to think about what you're going to bid. And like you said, Medici is a great example of a once around auction, one of the purest forms of that I've experienced, and that's probably one of my top 5 games. Big fan of the auctions.
For sure.
Yeah, same. Medici was the first game that I was thinking of when we started talking about doing an episode about auctions. And the once around, I think I might have split opinions about, but that's just because sometimes you have to play as the early bidder and sometimes you get to play as the later bidder and decide how much do I really want this. And sometimes you're in the middle and you're like, I just want it for cheap, but maybe I'll get outbid.
Right.
And so they can be tough, but as a game mechanism, I think it's fantastic. And like you said, like extremely malleable, lots of different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Lots of great games that employ that mechanic.
It is fertile soil for board games for sure. And you guys touched on it a little bit, but I'll just reiterate real quickly. I love the agonizing decisions that come in auctions. I am kind of a masochistic board gamer in a way. Like I want to be in pain in a board game. Like I want to feel like I'm having a hard time making a decision. And auction games always do that to me because you just are trying to figure out how to value something. How much is it worth?
Yeah.
You know, I just don't know, right? I think I might know, but I'm not sure. So you're always second guessing yourself. I enjoy that in games.
So now that we've gone through kind of an overview of the mechanisms, let's get into the games.
Florence in the 15th century. The city is in the midst of an artistic, cultural, and financial boom. Thus begins a competition amongst the architects and master builders of Florence to build the most impressive places. Who will be the most successive builder? Who will score the most victory points? Who will win the game?
Always a good question.
Yeah.
Isn't that
kind
the
of
question
important.
that every game is asking?
That's right. Palazzo, published in 2005 by Alea and Rio Grande Games. At the time of this recording, its BGG rank is 1,922, so not too far down there. Designer, the great Reiner Knizia. You'll be hearing more about this guy later. We like Reiner Knizia here. I heard about this game. I've mentioned this before, and I'll say it again. I'm obviously heavily influenced by the Dice Tower. Z Garcia on the Dice Tower talks about this game quite often. For as old as it is, he actually has talked about it quite recently. So a brief rules summary of Palazzo. Basically, what you're trying to do in this game is you're trying to construct towers. And these towers can be 1 up to 5 floors high. You will score points in this game based upon how high you can make those towers. So the higher the tower is, the more points it'll score. And also, if you're able to construct a tower of the same type of building material, there are 3 different kinds of building materials. If you're able to construct one of all the same type of material on all floors, you'll also get a bonus for that as well. In addition, each floor has a certain number of doors and windows on it, which will also give you points for the number of windows on a floor. Some have 1, some have 3. So that gives you an idea of how the game scores. The way the game plays is on your turn, you have a choice between 3 actions. Your first action is you can take money. It's a simple action. You'll draw a number of cards equal to the number of players plus 1, and you will get to select 2 cards from that, and then everybody else will take 1 card in turn order from that offering. One thing to mention about money, there are 3 different kinds of currency. There's a red, a yellow, and a brown currency. Second action is you can buy or auction building tiles. So you've got a central area on the board, and that's called the material supply, where you can just directly buy tiles from here. And I think it's important to note these are not auctioned. They can just be bought, okay? There's no competition for these. Alternatively, if you prefer the building tiles in the quarries, which are 4 stations at the periphery, you auction for these. And it's a standard English-style auction, okay? So the leader will bid, and then it'll go around the table with ascending bids. High bidder wins. If you don't win the bid, you don't lose anything. And it's also important to note when you begin to bid, you have to use all the same color of currency. So if I start bidding with brown, I have to stay with brown, okay? And then your last action is you can restructure your building where you can take tiles out of it, or you can insert tiles into it after it's already been constructed. So it kind of lets you break the rules. Once the game ends, whoever has the highest number of victory points based on how they constructed their buildings is the winner. So that's how you play Palazzo. So, Cameron, what did you like about Palazzo?
Yeah, I think the general concept of building your units piece by piece is really interesting. I think the scoring is pretty unique. I like that you're kind of incentivized to make your structures uniform in style. So to me, I love seeing opportunities for different paths to victory. So maybe you can't get all of your structures to be uniform, but if you can, you're incentivized. You get bonus points for that. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, the question between, is it more efficient for me to just buy tiles from the center versus entering into one of those auctions for tiles is an interesting decision, because you can kind of pick and choose what you want without having to fight anybody else for it if you go from the center, but you might also be being inefficient by doing that. You might be spending more than you need to. One other thing that I thought was an interesting layer, which is not unique to Palazzo. I think some other games follow the same mechanism. Alhambra comes to mind, is the rebuilding aspect, where you can take a floor that maybe doesn't fit into your building right now, or maybe is not the ideal placement, but you can, as a full turn, choose to just move that floor and slot it right into the center of your building, which is kind of a funny concept if you think about it.
Don't try to do it at the end of the game.
Picking up the top floors and inserting it into the middle, yeah.
Don't try this at home.
Yeah, don't try it at the end of the game. Learn that lesson the hard way.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It does add that extra layer of, well, I can get more tiles now, but it might take me longer to actually get them into position where they need to be. And
it's
a risk, too, because if you take those and you only have a 1-story or 2-story building, it either counts negative points or it counts for nothing. So that was an interesting decision, I thought, too.
I think we should probably at least mention I think as a pro, it's a pretty beautiful game. I think the buildings themselves, I think are not like that great, but I actually think that the quarry tiles looked pretty great.
Well, art is subjective. I thought this game looked dreadful. Personally, everybody is different. I thought this game was kind of ugly looking, and the graphic design is kind of bad, especially like the windows on the buildings.
Yeah, I definitely think
It's hard to tell.
The buildings themselves aren't nearly as good as like more the landscape, and I thought there was some pretty good lighting and stuff like that. I think I was mentioning it when we were playing. I was like,
I see what you're saying.
It's kind of like pretty when you're looking at the quarry and the central building and stuff like that. It's really small and detailed. I appreciated that. But yeah, the things that you actually play with aren't nearly as attractive. The currency cards don't look nearly as good.
They're plain Jane for sure.
The landscape paintings.
I think maybe it's an example, a little bit of form over function, where I don't necessarily mind the art. I think it looks okay. It's not anything super exciting in my opinion, but I do think that the choice of art in this particular game makes it difficult to be able to evaluate the state of the board. When I'm looking out at the board and I'm trying to decide which set of tiles I want to go for or what I need in my buildings, not being able to see what's available, I think we mentioned, but the windows and the doors are sometimes pretty difficult to see.
It's terrible.
It's hard to tell sometimes, even if something is a window or a door, there are little people painted onto some of the buildings.
Unnecessarily busy.
That obscure the windows and the doors and make it difficult to tell.
Building colors are somewhat similar too, right? There's like one that's tan and then there's one that's brick.
Brown, yeah.
Like brownish brick, yeah. And I found it on a few occasions. I would like plan my turn thinking I'm going to go pick that up. And then at the last second, I'd be like, oh crap, I don't need that.
Yeah. So in summary, it's ugly. Okay.
I still like the pretty landscape painting.
It's terrible. All right. So other cons, it seems like we've transitioned into cons. So I have thoughts here. One thing I want to mention that really bothered me, especially the more I played this game. So this game is an auction game, right? It's an auction game. So this central action where you can take tiles for free, well, not for free, without competition in the material supply.
With an increasing discount.
With an increasing discount as tiles pile up in there was just too freaking easy. I don't understand billing a game as an auction game and then you have an action that's just so easy and convenient, and you can win the game that way by just taking tiles that are cheap and you have no competition. You know you're going to get it. I don't know. That just seems to fly in the face of an auction game to me. That just very convenient center action.
I will say another thought that I had about the auction mechanic in this game, and it's interesting in one sense that they chose to split the currency 3 ways, to have 3 different colors of currency. It does add an additional wrinkle to when I'm taking currency, what colors do I need to build up? Can I get those sets of 3? But I feel like it also chops the auction off at the knees a little bit because I never felt that pressure going into an auction of, oh man, how much is it really safe to spend in this auction? It's basically, I pick the color that I think is most appropriate, usually the one that I have the most of.
Right.
And I'm willing to spend all of that color. Because ultimately, if I don't spend all of that color, what am I left with? I'm left with 1 card, maybe 2 cards of that color, which are now basically worthless until I rebuild my supply of that particular color. So why not go all in?
Yeah.
And when the decision is just pick a color and then go all in, it takes away from the pressure that you normally feel in an auction like that. Like, oh, is it really safe to go that extra couple steps? Or am I going to cost myself something else later on down the line? I'm not costing myself necessarily because I can just rebuild in a new color, right?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. One of the biggest issues I have with this game, there is no tension in this game. Auction games should ooze tension by their very nature. And because of the reasons that you just outlined and the fact that there's no penalty for people to challenge you in an auction. So why won't they just run you up, right? If I'm going for something, you're going to run me up. And the reason for that is, so normally in auctions, they're like, well, I could pass and then I could stick you with it. But the problem with that is I'm the one that initiated the auction. If you don't win the auction, you've just lost a turn.
Yep.
You get nothing. If you initiate an auction, you lose it. And your competitors, if they challenge you and don't win it, they get all their money back. So there's no reason for them not to challenge you, right? So really what ends up happening is everybody just stockpiles tons of money in their hand and just goes into auctions when they know they can win it. That is boring.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Yeah. I'm 100% behind that.
Yeah. And one more thing I would say about the auction, it's just boring in general, right? Like English auction style, if that's like the central mechanism of the game, the whole, I bid this, now I bid that, I bid this, around and around and around and around till somebody drops out, that is just the lamest of the lame kind of auction, in my opinion, right? Like, based mostly on the fact that we've played so many kinds of auctions and we've seen it done better now. I just have no patience for an auction like that anymore. It's just not interesting. Just felt bored by it.
So let's talk about overall ratings for the game.
Sounds good.
Chris, why don't you start?
Oh, you're going to let me start, huh? I feel like I sound angry in this review.
You do sound angry.
Maybe there might be a reason for that. I don't know. So I would say that if I had played this game like 5 to 8 years ago, I would probably be kinder to it than I'm going to be to it right now. And the main reason for that is what I've said already. I feel like this style of auction where you're just raising the bid on each other until everyone drops out except for one person and the high bidder wins is dated. And not to mention, you can literally win this game without auctioning at all. Why would I play an auction game where I can win the game without auctioning? I just can't. I have no tolerance for that anymore. So I think for me, I'm not denying that maybe in the past it was a good game, but for me now, I don't enjoy it. I rate this game a 2. I think it's a bad game. I don't like it. It's definitely going to get sold. I like Knizia, but this one just missed the mark for me.
Yeah, for me, I think I agree with a lot of the things that you mentioned. There are so many games out there nowadays, Medici being one of them that we talked about.
So much better, yeah.
By the same designer, even, that just do this so well that it's hard to accept a game that is just kind of meh. And so for me, I think that's why I gave it a 3. It was kind of a meh for me. I would maybe play it again, but don't really have much desire to.
Won't be with me.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. I would play it again. I don't think I played this one nearly as many times as we would normally for this sort of a review. So I would give it another shot. I don't like that sort of like, I did poorly and that leaves a bad taste in my mouth, so I'm going to dump all over the game sort of a thing. I certainly don't want to come to this doing that. But I do feel like there are probably way too many factors that can sort of be attributed either to luck, player order, or both. And finally, like you said, Chris, auction games should require you to participate in auctions. This one basically doesn't. So I gave this a 2 as well.
Okay. Yeah. So those are our final thoughts on Palazzo. If you're interested in picking up Palazzo after these reviews, if something sounded interesting to you, I have good news. It's available. There might be a reason for that. So because it's so old, it's not available on online retailers, but it's readily available in the BGG marketplace. So there are 32 listings of this game in the BGG marketplace. That's a lot for pretty low prices. I mean, even as low as like $10 or $15, I think. So if you want this game, it's available. It's also available on eBay as well.
And I think it's an interesting point because we talk about a game and then we talk about like, where can you get it? It seems ironic. It's like, why would we do that in a podcast setting? I think one of the interesting things that I would love to see in a podcast is like for some listener to challenge us on this. Bring it up in social media. DM us. Send us your review. Send us an email with your thoughts on it. Maybe eventually we could get some feedback like that and consider it and read your response on the show. That would make for some interesting sort of like circle back to a game that maybe someone changed their minds about. Maybe that's possible.
Oh, for sure. As we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we have recently created a BGG guild for the show.
Exactly.
And so we plan to post some forums on the guild for each of the games that we cover on the show. So if you have thoughts or you want to bring us your opinion, drop in there.
And that's our thoughts on Palazzo.
In the year 12 of his reign, the king Akhenaton organized a sumptuous celebration for his wife Nefertiti in honor of their wedding anniversary. He ordered members of the Egyptian nobility to find rare and precious gifts throughout the various markets of Egypt. The players represent Egyptian nobles who, eager to earn important political positions through royal appointment, send their servants out to collect gifts that will be presented to Akhenaton. The pharaoh will award prestige points based on the gift's originality. The player who earns the most prestige wins.
Nefertiti, published in 2008 by Madigo Games, designed by Jacques Barriot, Thomas Coe, Guillaume Montiage. Currently, it's ranked on BGG 1,379. I heard about this game as part of our mining endeavor, which we plan to talk about very soon. I know we alluded to it in the previous episode. So tune into episode 3 if you want some more details about how we're mining for these gems that we're finding. But yeah, early on in that attempt, I came across Nefertiti as, I stumbled across it, honestly, and it sounded interesting. It had a high rating, but not a whole lot of ratings, and I'd never heard of it.
I've never heard of this game. To be as highly ranked as it is, I'm surprised I hadn't, but I had not heard of this one.
Yeah, so to be honest, it was really just one of the first potential gems that I stumbled across in our attempts to mine the Board Game Geek database, and so figured I would pick it up, and we tried it out, and you'll find out if we liked it or not in a second.
All right.
So let's talk about the rules.
Yeah.
To Nefertiti. Nefertiti is ultimately a game that's about shopping, which is some people's worst nightmare, I suppose. But players are going to find themselves navigating an ever-changing landscape of markets in ancient Egypt, bidding for precious gift cards to give to the king so that he can give them to his wife, Nefertiti. Not sure why he can't go out and buy his own gifts, but yeah, the perks of being king, I suppose. So each player turn is incredibly simple in this game. A player is going to choose one of their 4 available servant meeples, and they're going to place that servant out into one of 3 open markets. The interesting part about this is that those markets are always changing. So there are actually 8 different markets on the board, only 3 of which are open at any given time. And then as the game progresses and different markets close, those that are open rotate out, and the ones that are closed rotate in. And so there are 3 simultaneous auctions going on at any given time, and those auctions are always different based on which markets are available to players. Another interesting wrinkle is that players never know exactly how long a market is going to be open.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept when you think about it. I'm going shopping, but I don't know exactly how long Target's going to be open. So.
Right.
So on a player's turn, they're going to send one of their servants out into one of these open markets. And each market is comprised of a series of market stalls that have different bidding values on them. And each market is a little bit different. So one market might have them arranged in a pyramid shape, whereas another market might have them arranged in a different shape. And those shapes matter because each market has a different condition that closes that market. For example, the pyramid-shaped market will close as soon as there is a servant meeple in every single level of the pyramid. There's also a closed economy in this game. So each market will start with 1 coin, and each player starts with a certain amount of coins dependent on the number of players and turn order. But that's all the money that there is in the game. No other money will enter the game or exit the game. And so on a player's turn, when they place their servant, if that closes one of the markets, if it triggers that closing condition, then whoever currently has the highest bid within that market must pay the full value of their bid, and they have the opportunity to choose from one of 4 potential gift cards that are available within that market. After that, each other player that has a servant in that market, from highest bid to lowest bid, then has the opportunity to either choose to pay their bid and take one of the cards that's remaining, or they can take half of the money out of that market. So one thing I should mention is when you pay for a card, when you pay your bid, you're paying your money into that particular market's treasury. So that's part of this closed economy mechanism that's going on. You pay into that treasury, but then other players have the opportunity to, on their turn, pull money out of that treasury, which is the only way, really, aside from a couple special abilities, that you can gain more money in this game. Money is very tight. And then once all servants have had a chance to take that option of either take money or take a card, the market closes, a new market opens, and play proceeds. When cards are taken from a market, new cards will replace those after that market closes. And when the deck of cards runs out, or more specifically, when a specific card gets flipped up out of that deck, which is shuffled into the bottom few cards of the deck.
The Akhenaton.
The Akhenaton.
Akhenaton comes to town.
Akhenaton does come to town. The game will end, and each player will look at the cards that they have in front of them, and they will score those. So the way the cards score is also unique in that if I am the only player that holds a particular card, or a particular type of card, rather, that card will score its maximum value. Each card has 3 different point values. If another player at the table also has the same type of gift card in front of them, I will score the middle value. And if more than one other player at the table has that same gift in front of them, I score the lowest value that's available on that card. So you're rewarded by the king for having the most unique gifts, I guess is how the theme plays out in that. The only other aspect of the game really is that on one particular card in each market, there is a special king's seal that if a player chooses to take that card, they also take the seal. And then on a player's turn, they have the option to, before placing a meeple out on the board, they have the option to spend that seal in order to grab a special ability card. These cards do a number of different things. That's pretty much it. So let's talk about our thoughts about the game. Cameron, what did you think about Nefertiti?
For sure, yeah. So this, I will say, it's not an ordinary auction.
Not at all.
So at any moment, there are 3 auctions going on, like you said. And I think one of the key choices you have to make is which one is going to be most profitable for you. Which one should you go for now? Unlike, as we just talked about, Palazzo, where maybe you don't even have to participate in an auction. You have to participate in an auction on your turn. And it's like, not just which market do I go to, but where do I position myself in that market? Am I trying to win it? How much do I care when I go to this particular market about winning? Because one of the things that I think is so neat about this is, yes, you do have to participate in an auction, but you don't have to participate in all the markets. And you don't have to try to win all of the markets. And sometimes you shouldn't. Sometimes it's much more advantageous to you to go, how can I come in second? How can I come in third in order to get some money?
Or how can I just be involved?
Yeah.
You don't even really have to worry about position.
It's advantageous to you in this game to basically just go, how can I be involved in basically the closing of every market? Even if it's maybe I get something for cheap, or maybe I get a ton of money, or maybe I win and get precisely the gifts that I'm trying to collect, because those are going to be worth the most points to me. I really enjoyed that aspect. What did you guys think about the closed economy?
Oh, yes.
I feel like this is an important question to ask, and foreshadowing, I'm leaning toward it being a pro.
Yeah, this is my favorite part of the game. Closed economy is not unique to Nefertiti. I've certainly played games with closed economies in it, but not enough games. I don't know why it's not utilized more. Closed economy markets create incredible tension because new money is not introduced into the game. So you always feel short. And that's good because it creates challenging decisions. Every time in this game, except for when you win a market, when you have to take cards, I'm always thinking, do I take that card or do I take the money? You know, because I know I need money. Because if you get short on money, you will suffer in this game.
And if you take that card, not only are you not getting money, but you're putting money into the market that most likely someone who comes after you within that market is going to take.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see like what's going to happen that's unexpected, right? Your neighbor is participating in the same market and you're like, I know they're going to go for that card. And then boom, you're thinking, well, I'm right behind him, so I'm going to get the money. And then they just drain all the money.
And then they take the money.
Like, oh, now I got a freaking chair and I don't need that.
Yeah. Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of really interesting decisions in this game. The timing of placements into the market, which markets to place in, when to try to block someone in a market, when to try to trigger the closing of a market before other people maybe are ready for it to close. I thought was really interesting.
One other thing we haven't mentioned that I think is interesting, I always enjoy when games do this, are the special cards.
I was going to talk about those too, yeah.
Yeah, I think without the special cards, the game would still be interesting.
Yeah.
But they make the game even better. And the reason why is this is a set collection game, right? You're trying to collect sets. Normally in set collection, if somebody gets a card that you need, that you're trying to exclusively get, that kind of sucks, you know, because you're like, well,
stuck. It's permanent.
Now my set is not worth as much. But those special cards give you an out for that, and you can plan for it. You know, I play the special card now. You have to get rid of that card. You get paid for it, but, you know, you get rid of it. Now I have control of that set again.
Or you can take this junky one that I don't want.
Yeah.
And I'll give you like some consolation money for the difference.
So you've got some control.
But now all of mine are just worth a ton more points.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. I like the special cards do that.
Think of them as like power moves.
Yep, exactly. Mm-hmm. All right, so a lot of good things about this game. What did y'all not like? Any cons, Jason?
It was really hard for me, I think, thinking through this game to come up with cons, honestly. I will mention, because I feel like people care about this a lot, I will mention there is a little bit of luck in this game. One of the market's closing conditions is driven by a dice roll.
Yeah.
Right? And for some people, that's, you know, the mark of death for a game.
Yeah.
Right. But I think that because it is such a small component of the game, and because you can mitigate it. You can choose to play lower in a market, to bid less, or to prioritize that market. Make sure that you get involved before the market can close, because you'll always have that opportunity, unless, of course, the player just immediately closes the market as soon as they...
Which happens.
Which happens.
It happened to you, actually.
It did, and it actually hurt me in that game because I bid high, thinking that other people were going to join in behind me, and I wanted to make sure that I won, and then I rolled the die, and it closed the market, and I spent the most amount of money that I could have in that market and didn't need to.
Yeah.
So I think it mitigates that luck well enough. So really, that was the only thing I could think of, and I'm not even sure that that's a con.
I had a thought about one. I think there's a little bit of a vulnerability in terms of, I think it's possible for pawns to get stuck in certain markets. Markets don't have to close. So if people just decide that they're not going to participate in it, or like in the case that I saw, the thief card, which is one of the special cards, got used to yank the card with the seal out of the market. And so then here's a market. It was you got to get to 17 market. There was 2 pawns in there, but I guess because it was weakened at that point, it basically meant that for the back half of the game, my pawn and another player's pawn were just stuck in that market because no one wanted to invest in it.
I would argue that might actually be an advantage.
I agree.
Because one of the rules that I didn't explain is that if it ever comes to your turn and you don't have a servant meeple left, you only have 4. If it ever comes to your turn and you don't have one, you get to choose any market that you're involved in and immediately close it, regardless of whatever its condition is. And so if players allow you to do that, if they allow you to run out of meeples and you're the only person in that 17 plus market, you get free reign of that market. And so players shouldn't let you do that. So I think that if the other players at the table understand that shouldn't happen. Right?
Yeah. If you're placing in a market and nobody else is placing in it to close it with you, you should just put another person in there. Because eventually, if it's not closing, you'll get to a point where you don't have any more people to place, like Jason said, and then it'll close and you'll have 3 people in there, and you'll get what you want and then pay yourself back, most likely, and then you get another cheap card, right?
True, yeah, and I think probably if I examine that example a little bit more carefully, the reason that we weren't closing that market, this was the game that we played with Dave, where he had all the money, and so here it is. We got to get to 17, but me and this other guy are sitting here going we've only got 3 money. We can't afford to close it because we don't want to lose our cards, not being able to pay what we had to bid in order to win the market. Yeah,
we'll give a little quick short shout out to Dave here. Dave Yerger, our friend, he's a brilliant economic mind.
That's right.
He trades crypto and he just understands money, and they played a game where he pretty much just took control of the closed market and crippled everybody else.
Yeah.
And so we had to schedule an emergency session.
See if the game was actually vulnerable
I was ready
to
review it. Jason was ready to review it. And then we were watching this unfold across from us. And
oh no, is it broken?
Cameron looked like he was eating sour grapes because he couldn't do anything.
I was like, man, it's turn 4 and I can't afford anything.
And I was like, oh shoot, we better play with Dave. So we played another game, and it turned out there's ways to combat that. But yeah you got to be careful there.
I do think there's one, and maybe you guys think differently about this one too. The market that closes if you have 3 different colored meeples in it, I feel like that one is way too easy to close. And maybe that's by design. And it seems to me that in all of the different quadrants, one of the markets has an easier closing trigger, and then the other side is a little bit more stretched out. So maybe that was on purpose.
I think it probably is.
I hate it when I go to the store and somebody walks in with a different shirt from me, and the store just instantly closes. Especially when I'm headed to the store to steal half the money, and the store just closes before I get there.
Maybe they're experiencing a pandemic. Sorry, there's too many people in this room now. You're going to have to leave.
So, Cameron, final thoughts for you on Nefertiti?
Yeah. So I think that this is a well-paced game. I observed that it's possible to play it faster or slower, depending on how aggressive people are. I think that can either be a good or bad thing. I think there are a lot of great decisions to make in this game. I think there's a pinch of luck, which can always be fun, and enough opportunities to angle against other players. So I give this game a 4. I'd gladly play it again. And I think based on some of the conversations, I think it bodes well for a game when you can say, maybe there are different approaches to different elements in this game that could lead to different strategies. That type of thing, I think, speaks well for replayability of a game. So I give it a 4.
Nice. For me, this game has two things that I value very highly: uniqueness, or it being unusual, and it is. This auction bidding mechanic with kind of, it's not really work or placement, but you're placing your person in a position to try to position yourself well for the auction. That's interesting. And tension. You'll hear me, if you listen to this podcast, I'll use that word a lot because it's important to me, and I feel it in this game with a closed economy. So I've enjoyed this game very much. I think this game is excellent. It's above average for me. I give this game a 5.
Cool.
Wow. Yeah, for me, I would agree with what's already been said. I think when I was thinking about this game, and when I think about any game, really, I'm thinking, is it fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And every time I've played this game, it's just been a lot of fun.
Even though you've never won.
And that speaks to the greatness of it, right?
Yeah.
I've never won this game. Maybe someday. And maybe that's part of it too. Maybe I'm driven to want to succeed at it eventually. But yeah, even though I've never won, I've had fun every single time I've played it. And that's a huge indicator to me of a great game. I actually gave this game a 6.
Woo!
Which I think is...
It's our first one.
Oh, man. Holy cow. All right.
I think it is definitely a hidden gem. I'm glad that I stumbled across it. Would gladly play it.
Beautiful.
Awesome. All right.
That's pretty high praise for Nefertiti. Where can we get Nefertiti if folks are interested?
Yeah, so obviously we enjoyed the game. We recommend it. You should definitely try to seek it out. Unfortunately, like most of our games, because it's an older game, it has very limited online retail availability. There is some if you look hard enough, but you'll have to look hard. It's a little hard to find.
I found it from Noble Knight Games.
Okay, yeah. And that's a really good site for finding more hard-to-find games, for sure. It is for sale on BGG Marketplace, 14 copies last time I looked. So if you want it, you can certainly get it. Some listings on eBay as well, 6 last time I looked. So it is available. All right.
And that's a wrap on Nefertiti.
Strasbourg in the 15th century. The city's fortunes are powerfully influenced by the craft guilds, who occasionally even occupy the majority of seats in the city council. You take on the roles of the city's ambitious families. Your goal is to get your own family members admitted to the guilds. Only the clever use of influence points will make it possible for them to be accepted as an apprentice, journeyman, or even a master, provided that you have the money for the appropriate entrance fees on hand. But never underestimate the power of the nobility and the church.
What kind of accent was that,
I
Cameron?
don't know. I'm thinking like some kind of London.
I've known you for a long time. I was wondering how long it was going to take for you to use a voice. I knew it wouldn't be long. We played D&D together a lot. I knew this was coming eventually.
I'm waiting for the game to come out that is just like the perfect opportunity to pull out like the dwarf.
You've got a good one.
We'll start with, these British accents. I don't know what the way I pronounced Strasbourg was, but
For the record, we do know that Strasbourg is in France.
yeah, and I will say the one accent that I will never attempt in seriousness is a French accent because I just can't do it.
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah.
All right, Strasbourg, published in 2011 by Pegasus Spiele. BGG ranking is 962.
Okay.
Now, I will say, so we talked about this a little bit before the podcast started, whether we were even going to allow ourselves to talk about games that were inside the top 1,000 on BGG, because that's really not that low. But I will say, I have, with one exception that I'm about to talk about in just a second, I have never heard this game talked about by anybody except for one person in the entire time that I've been in the board game hobby. This game is the definition of forgotten. Okay? And that's surprising because the designer of this game, if you don't know, is Stefan Feld. Mm-hmm. Okay? He's prominent. All right? One of the great designers.
For those of us who aren't as familiar with maybe a lot of his other repertoire, like what would you highlight in his games?
Yeah, so he has several games that are highly touted. So Castles of Burgundy, Trajan, Bora Bora, Bruges, Notre Dame. What else, Jason? That's a lot of them, right? Those are the big ones.
Okay.
Macau, which is out of print, but
In the Year of the Dragon.
In the Year of the Dragon. Oh, yeah. One of my favorites. Yeah. He's just got a bunch. Okay. Nobody talks about Strasbourg. And the reason for that is Strasbourg never had a wide release in the United States.
Interesting.
It was limited availability when it came out. I do not know why that is, but it was just, when it was released, it was limited, and then when it was gone, it was just gone.
Wow.
Okay? So the way I heard about this game is when I first got into the hobby, I was listening to a top 100 games of all time YouTube video series from a guy named Ryan Metzler.
Okay.
So Ryan Metzler was a Dice Tower contributor back in the day. He's married now and has kids, and so he just kind of fell off the grid. But when I first got in the hobby, he was really into like reviewing some of the like heavier games on the Dice Tower.
Okay.
I would highly recommend people seek out this top 100 games list of all time because it's got hidden gems all in it.
Cool.
Because it's older, right? A lot of the games we'll talk about come from this list. Okay. That's how I heard about it. I bought this game in Canada, of all places.
Wow.
I did not find it in the United States. When I took a trip to Nova Scotia with Talia, I was looking through board game stores like I always do when I go on vacation. I drive Talia crazy with that. Every time we go somewhere, I'm like, hey, can we just go to this board game store really fast? You know, sometimes it doesn't go well. Sometimes it does. But she went with me. So I was walking through this board game store, and on the ground, I saw this copy of Strasbourg. So there are games everywhere in this board game store.
Just like discarded off to the side?
Well, not necessarily discarded, but they had so many games, they just had them sitting on the floor. So, which, for me, this is like my dream. Because these are the kind of stores where you find hidden gem games. Like
you
where they
actually
just have like,
dig.
they have overstock. I mean, there's just games everywhere. So I saw, sitting on the ground, Strasbourg, and then right next to it, Wealth of Nations.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So I was actually trying to decide between these two games. And thank goodness I didn't pick Wealth of Nations, because that game stinks.
I was going to say, you buy it and then you immediately hate it.
No offense to John Sink, because he likes the game, and he introduced me to it when we were on our like board game retreat that we do every year. That game is terrible.
I remember you saying you don't like it.
It's long and boring, okay?
So there's Chris looking back and forth at these two different games.
That's right. So I decided to go with Strasbourg because I remember Ryan Metzler saying that it was a Grail game for him, and that was in like 2012 because you just couldn't get it. So I bought it, all right? That's how I acquired it. So how to play Strasbourg. I think in teaching this brief rule summary, I think the most intuitive place to start is to explain how this auction works because it is unique and there is none quite like it, okay? So in this particular game, you auction with a deck of cards. Everybody has a deck of cards, 24 to be exact, with 1s through 6s. So you have 4 1s, 4 2s, all the way up through 4 6s in this deck. And this deck is your bidding power in the game. So for me to participate in an auction, if I use a 6 and a 4 from that deck, my auction power for that particular auction is 10, but the trick is once I've used those cards to bid in the game, they're discarded and they are gone, okay? So I can use 12 cards if I want in the first round of bidding. There are 5 rounds in the game, but now I only have 12 cards left for the whole game, okay? So your bidding power in the game is finite, and that is unique. I've never seen anything quite like that in an auction game. So the way the game works is starting with the first player, they will begin to draw cards from their deck one at a time. And you will draw cards until you feel like you are ready to stop drawing cards. And that's how many you'll have for that round of bidding. There are 5 rounds in the game. Every round has 7 different auctions in it. Okay? Once you've drawn your cards, you will then assign them to piles. If I drew 5 cards, I could have 5 piles with 1 card, which means I'll participate in 5 auctions with just a single valued card. Or I could do 2 piles, one with 2 cards, one with 3 cards. Or I could do one single pile with 5 cards in it.
Which we've seen.
Which we have seen. A super strong bid. And everybody at the table knows it, that one of those 7 auctions, I'm trying to win it. And so that's how you assign the cards. Once everybody has assigned their cards face down, we will then in turn order begin to bid on auctions. Starting with the start player, you'll flip over one of your piles, and then the next person can either pass or flip a pile, and it will go around like that one time. You flip over one pile. Whoever bid the highest amount wins the auction. The winner of the auction places a pawn in the council. They get a goods token, and then they get to place a pawn on a grid board, which is kind of like area control, but you're also trying to satisfy certain secret objectives that you get dealt to you at the beginning of the game. So, for example, maybe I'm trying to have 3 pawns in a row, or I'm trying to surround a certain city. So you're trying to strategically place out your pawns in that way. If you come in second, you get a goods token and you place a character in the city. And if you come in third, you either get a goods token or you can place in the city. Mm-hmm. If you don't get in one of those places, you'll get a card back for later rounds. Like I said, the placement in the city is important because it costs money. There are auctions in the game to get money, but in order to get that money, you have to win that auction. You can't come in second or third. You must win it outright. The game will end once we've gone through the 5 rounds and all of the auctions for each round. We'll then add up all of the points plus point scoring for your secret objective cards, which give you different number of points, and whoever has the most points through the game is the winner. So that's the rules for Strasbourg. Jason, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so I think the thing that stuck out to me the most about this game was the objective cards, right? The objective cards make this game. The tension, and we've talked all along about tension in games, these bring the tension to this game because not only am I trying to decide what auctions do I need to be a part of, which ones do I need to step out of, how many cards do I take for each round, do I try to get influence within the guilds, or do I just focus on trying to get money this round? But I'm also having to do all of that within the context of, can I meet these objectives? I think for me, that was one of the things that stuck out the most.
Yeah, and really, the way that I view the hidden objectives is it sets the tone for your strategy from the first round. Like you said, there are so many different auctions, right? Each auction, every round, you're bidding on a different thing to win. It could be overwhelming if you didn't have something guiding that. And to me, before you even play the first turn, you're having to try to find synergy between the cards that you're dealt to go, can I overlap these in a certain way in order to accomplish these? Because you're risking, as I believe there's negative, I can't remember the actual point.
So you get dealt 5, you can keep all 5, right, and they have differing points. But for every one you keep and you don't succeed, you lose 3 points. Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. The secret objectives, without them, the game would still be good. They take the game over the top for me. They give you a plan from the start, like Cameron was saying. They force you to plan ahead. And you can plan ahead in this game, and you have to because
the schedule's public. You can see it from the beginning of the game.
You see the rounds, you see how the auctions are going to come out for the entire game. There are 35 auctions in the game, and you see the exact order of how they're going to come out. You have to plan several rounds in advance. Like, I have to win that one. And you know that from the start, or at least a couple of rounds in. Certain rounds you've got to go for. And so it encourages really awesome long-term planning. If you miscalculate or if you stretch yourself too thin and try to get too much, your whole game can fall apart like a house of cards. It will just absolutely unravel on you if you stretch yourself too thin, which some people might not like that. I love that. Like, this game will punish you if you miscalculate.
Yeah.
One more, since we're talking about tension, which I love, the card flipping, like choosing your hand for the round, is so agonizing. Mm-hmm. It's just brutal.
Do I pick up one more?
Do I flip another card over? Because you'll play this weird game with yourself where you kind of feel like you know where you want to be. And you're like, well, if I can just flip over a 3, and then you flip over a 6, which normally would be good. And you're like, dang it, I don't want to flip over because I need that for later. You're like, so you're kind of playing like this weird push your luck game a little bit where you're like, I just want a little more, but not too much because I need more for later, right?
You don't want to be sitting there with dumb expressions on your face because you just gave away that this is a really important round for you to everyone else.
Yeah. And that pile just keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller.
You are constantly counting your remaining pile over the game, trying to figure out if you've left yourself enough cards for the future rounds, and it just creates such a great tension that I love.
So let's move on to cons. One of my potential cons, I think I enjoyed playing this game immensely, but it's exhausting.
Mentally taxing.
Mentally exhausting to play this game because you are constantly planning ahead, constantly looking at the board and trying to figure out if you have just enough to get through that next auction and survive. Yeah, it's a brain burner for sure.
Yeah. You have to be on at all times in this game. If you drift, you'll probably lose. I mean, really, Jason is right. You have to be absolutely engaged at all times.
The last game that we played came down for me to one auction at the end. I had to win that auction. and I was counting on the one other person who I knew might want to win that auction not having enough, and they got me by like one card, and that was it. That was over. I was done. Game over.
It is crazy that you say that. So I played a game with Eric Loomis.
Also, hi, Eric.
Yeah, hey, Eric.
Thanks for being a part of our gaming
Another
community.
shout out to our game group. They're all going to get mentioned at some
That's
point.
right.
So I had a similar situation, and I remember it. I regret it now. During the game, I saw an auction that I could pick up real cheaply, although I didn't really want it, but it was worth points, and it only cost me a card. And I was like, oh, I should really use this card to win this other thing or for the merchant action. But I decided, well, I can get it. I'll just take the points. And in the very last round, I had to win an auction, and I lost it by 1 point. And it's because I took that auction like in round 2. I know that's why I lost.
Wow.
Had I not done that, I would have won that auction at the end and probably won the game. That's how this game will punish you. If you miscalculate just at all, you'll lose.
Yeah.
I mean, it's that tight.
I would agree. It's a finely tuned game, and you have to design a strategy, and you have to be committed to that strategy throughout the game every step of the way. There's not a fluff decision or just a maybe I'll figure it out sort of a thing. You have to calculate what you're going to do, and you have to be committed to doing it. That's how you mitigate against the luck factor of like which cards are going to come up when you're drawing.
One other thing I will mention, because this has burned me twice in playing this game, is there is one objective card in the deck. And I don't know if it's just, I don't know how to play this game well, but part of me thinks this objective is in there to trick you.
I think it could be done.
There is one objective in the deck that requires you to get, I don't know.
2 people in each guild.
Oh, yeah.
So 12 of your guys out on the board.
Right.
In
Tried and
every game
failed
that
with
I've
that
played,
one.
I've never seen anybody get 12 guys on the board, period. Let alone manage to do it 2 in each of the colors. And for whatever reason, I always get that card, and I always, for some reason, think it's a good idea, and it's never a good idea.
Well, it's the most valuable one. It's worth 12.
It is.
There's got to be a way that you can do it.
I think it can be done.
I think that in order to do it, what you would have to do is get really good at getting in third place and just using that option to place instead of, what is it? Pick up.
Yeah, you can pick up a good tile or place.
Right.
So you could do it that way. That's risky, though, right? Because if you lose 2 of the 3, you're screwed at that point. Yeah, I think it's hard. I think a lot of it, honestly, Jason, the choice to take that or not really depends on where those more expensive guild spots fall in the round order.
Yeah.
If they're early, don't do it because you can't afford it at that point. But if you can build up some money and they're later, it might be possible.
I think we're ready to maybe move on to overall thoughts.
Yeah, I have no cons to say about this game.
Oh, really?
Not really.
Okay.
Not anything that you've said already.
Okay.
Well, then why don't you give us your rating first, then?
Yeah. So Strasbourg, this is an incredible game to me. As I've said before, I love games that are tense and make me uncomfortable, and I'm always engaged, and that checks all 3 of those boxes for me. This is the best auction game I have ever played.
Wow. Okay.
Ever.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is my
high
favorite
praise.
auction game. I've never done a top 100 games of all time, maybe one day. If I were to, this would be in my top 10.
Wow.
This game is phenomenal. This game is a 6 for me. I was hoping I'd get to be the first 6.
Yeah.
Jason beat me to it. Bad cop over there. What a joke. What a bunch of bull. But anyways, I think this game is amazing, and I hope more people can get exposed to it because I think it's great.
I really enjoyed this game as well. For some of the reasons that I laid out, I don't know that it's as high of praise from me as Chris gave it. I gave this game a 5, with the caveat that I don't think it's going to be for everybody. And that goes for any game that we review on this show. Different people are going to gravitate towards different styles of games and different themes and everything. But this game is exhausting, and you have to be on point the whole game, like we mentioned before. And so it's not going to be for everybody.
Yeah.
But if you enjoy that kind of having to plan way in advance and thinking about every move and agonizing over every move you're making, it's a fantastic game. I gave it a 5.
I am also going to give this game a 5. I think it's an excellent game. I would happily play it any game night. It's challenging. There are so many good decisions, and yet it provides you some direction on strategy. The things I feel like you don't have any control over, I think are really well mitigated by the game itself, leaving you pretty much only to contend with the initial game setup and the other players at the table. I think that makes for an excellent game. You're not dealing too heavily with a bunch of randomness. You know, there's a little bit of it, right? You don't know what order the cards are going to come out when you're drafting them. But it's, like I said, mitigated is the best word I can think of, because, well, if I don't get great cards when I was going to, you know, maybe pick up 4 for my turn, if I don't get great cards, I can pick up another one, right? If I need to do well that round, I'm not just stuck with luck.
Right.
So I give it a 5. I think it's an excellent game.
Wow.
I don't really have a philosophy developed yet on what I would consider a 6, but I really hope that we find a game that I just absolutely fall in love with. And I think maybe the thing that does tick this down from a 6 for me would probably be how rigorous it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and some people don't like that kind of game. I mean, it can be intense, but at the same time, approachable.
It's not complex.
This game is teachable in 15 minutes.
Yes.
I mean, it is not hard to understand, but the choices are brutal. You just need to know that going in. It is a hard game to win.
Yeah, exactly. I think that wraps up our thoughts on Strasbourg. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have some bad news and some good news on this game. So the bad news with Strasbourg is this game is way out of print. Okay, this is going to be really hard to find.
Like on the floor in a game store out of print.
Yeah, unless you find it on the floor of a game store in Europe or Canada somewhere, you're not going to get this game. All right. There are 13 listings of this game on Board Game Geek. However, the cheapest is $100.
Wow. Ooh.
They go up to $250.
Wow.
And that is because this game is super rare. It's Stefan Feld, and it's amazing. So, you know, they're just driving it up.
People hold on to it.
Yeah.
Games that they love.
There are 3 listings on eBay from $140 to $250.
Holy cow.
Okay? That's the bad news. The maybe good news is that recently, within the last year, Queen Games did a Kickstarter where they're redoing Stefan Feld games called the City Collection. Okay? I know this because I backed it. I'm a Kickstarter junkie. All right? So they've confirmed that they're reprinting Macau as Amsterdam, Bruges as Hamburg, and Rialto as a game called New York. But they're calling this a series. Okay? And they've said that there are more to come. My suspicion is that Strasbourg will be one of these games. I don't know that.
Yeah.
That's purely speculative.
Got the right name.
It does have the right name. And please do this, Queen Games. If anybody listens to this, if this ever got the Queen, just do this. Like, man, what
Very
an
worthy
amazing
game.
It would be amazing. It would be perfect. And it would sell. I'm convinced that if this got kickstarted, it would sell. So if you're following along with that, or if you don't know about it, keep an eye out for it, because it could be becoming available again as a reprint.
Awesome.
We want to really thank you guys for listening to this podcast. If you're interested, we would love for you to check out our website at hiddengems.games. You can also follow us online, various social media accounts. We would love to interact with you there. We'd love to interact with you on our BGG Guild forums. Continue the conversation that we started about these games here in this episode. You can contact us on Instagram and Twitter. Keep telling your friends about the show. Write us a review. Reviews basically drives exposure to podcasts, and so that would really help other people find us. So with that, I'm your host, Cameron.
This is Chris.
I'm Jason.
Thanks for listening. This episode of Hidden Gems, number 2, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on February 20, 2021. Join us in 2 weeks when we talk about board games from one of the masters of modern board game design, the great Reiner Knizia. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Caitlin Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Caitlin Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at hiddengems.podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something burning you want to say about one of the games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems. And until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search. In the year 12 of his reign, King Akhenaten. Nah,
Oh boy.
I knew I was
Did
gonna
you
blow
not
it.
practice this ahead of time?
No, I literally wrote it out in phonetic.
Oh my
Give me another
Akhenaten.
Sesterces.
Sesterces.
Which we were wrong about.
Akhenaten.
Yeah, you corrected him, and it was actually correct.
Potato.
All right, potato. I keep trying to think of like our theme song, but I just keep hearing Seinfeld every time.
Do, 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 do.
Yeah.
There we go. There it's it.
All right, that was fun.
Yeah, I'm shopping, at my grocery store and looking for pasta or whatnot, and someone with a red shirt walks down the aisle, and all of a sudden the store closes. One of the markets, probably gonna strike all of this from the
Just get it out.
it's not rolling as well as I wanted it to roll.
Just say what you got to say, man.
I don't even remember where I was now.
Potato.